Tribute Pals to the Mel K Show. I have a really special show today. I met this couple about a year ago, and I've been watching their fight and praying for them nonstop. And I'm excited to bring them on the show today. They are Terry and Mark Steinman. And then we also have an amazing warrior for God and country and the children, Mary Flynn O'Neill, with us. And we want to share a little bit about their story, because you might be going through the same thing or know somebody who is. And we really need to get the word out about there's a war on our children. And I think it's far worse than most people want to admit. So welcome, everyone, to the show.
Hi, Mel.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, first and foremost, Terry and Mark, if you guys could please, we met about a year ago and I've been following your story, but if you could give my audience a little bit of the background so that they can understand what's been going on and kind of dig in from there.
Okay, well, Terry and I are, we have been married for 24 years. We have 7 beautiful children from our marriage. I'm a 20-year veteran of the United States Air Force. We're both patriotic, freedom-loving Americans, and our life changed back in 2016 when we were subject to something that we were not aware of, and many other Americans are not aware of, even with the increased visibility. And so what you're doing and highlighting this, Mel, is extremely important. And what we're here to talk about today, not just a little bit about what happened to us, but I know Mary has some involvement in what's going on, and I'm certain that many will benefit from what she has to say. But we want to highlight before our fellow Americans a fraudulent operation that's ongoing in respect to the security and safety and the integrity of the American family. And we're very honored to have Mary as an advocate, because she cares very much about the American family. And having come from a great family herself, many people know her, many of her brothers and sisters, and namely one, General Flynn, who has been very active and trying to reawaken America. And we're out here doing our part with our little element, because I have mentioned in many interviews and public engagements about a seditious operation happening within our country. And there are many different elements. And so we're here to talk about today about children who are being unlawfully separated from good parents without them being charged with a crime or convicted of a crime. Children are being kidnapped under the color of law on only an allegation, and very few people get their children returned. What happens is they are eventually funneled out into the foster care system, which is extremely dangerous for children. They end up in child trafficking networks. We know that this is happening through the CPS and family court system. And then they're eventually adopted out. And then the re-education begins, and into anything but something American. So this is characterized like that, namely socialism, communism. Yeah. And so there's a conditioning of the American people going on, in that they disguise these tactics as a safety and best interest issue. And so it really is not a safety and best interest. It's actually to the harm of American families. And so we'll talk more about the driver behind that, but I just want to kind of frame it, and that is an overview, because the impact is very destructive to families, financially, socially, and for just the integrity of the family unit. So thank you again for hosting us on your show today.
Yeah. And Mary, you've been involved for quite some time in advocating for people. And I wanted to hear a little bit about when you started doing that and what you saw that made you feel like people needed to know what was going on and do something about it.
Well, I've been involved in pro-life since I was a little kid. My mother was a huge advocate and president of the national and Rhode Island pro-life movement, Right to Life. And so, it's been a heart a heart piece of mine that that I continue on, not knowing that that's what she was kind of grooming me for, but really, you know, to be growing up in a big family that we, you know, the Catholic family that we grew up Irish, and my brother's persecution really brought me into, you know, the meeting of all these kind of groups that my interest, and God has shown me that it's always been about the children. And I've had my own experiences in my little life with my children and my daughters. So Terry and I met through Mike's persecution, really, on this Twitter and all that, and social media. And I'm not real savvy with that stuff, but our family needed to step up for right. Michael, and then my sister and my brother had a defense fund, and the American people really got us through with prayers and funding his defense fund, which is what we owe the American people. And so Michael asked me to come to work for him with America's Future, and I did a little work for Sidney Powell and that kind of sort of stuff. But I've been in nonprofit for over 35 years. My last bout was working with the Catholic Church for 15 years. And so I saw some very serious corruption in the Lord. I kept asking the Lord, what are you doing with me? I don't want to see this anymore. Right. And my personality is because I was born between these two beautiful, strong, strapping generals. And mind you, my other brother is out in, you know, command of the Pacific, and we need some serious prayers for him and for his group and these patriots, because there's still a lot of patriots in the military, even though the military is getting, you know, really a shit end of the stick right now.
I agree.
I have to be blunt about that.
That's good.
And we have to pray for them, because a lot of good people are being thrown out. And so anyway, so this story with Mark and Terry hit me because the unbelievable part of Terry and Mark's story is these children that they had, and the way they were attacked and directed, the hit that they took. This happens in my experience. My daughter was hit. My two grandchildren were taken into foster care because of abusive father who turned on them and then used the system to take the children and to work the system. And that's what has perpetuated into the government. The government, the welfare system, the family court system needs to be completely taken down. CASA, all these agencies, all these government, we all know this now. Michael's persecution opened up huge can of worms and opened up and exposed all kinds of corruption and allowed people to go and dig and research and find out the truth. And, you know, sadly, there's a divide between patriots and groups, but, you know, we still have to continue to work towards this big thing is saving children. This is all about the children, you guys. And Terry and Mark, God has brought them into a path that we can, you know, it's tough, it's sad, it's a tough thing. My two grandchildren are 13 now. They're with the father now. The mother has lost, she needs help. The system absolutely ruined my daughter's life. It really did. And I'm a witness to that. And I know what, you know, this has done to families, and they did nothing but destroy families. CPS, Family Court, CASA, all these agencies, all about money. They have done nothing but destroy families. And that's what they set out to do. That's their plan, to destroy the family, the American family.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's funny. I've had on a bunch of people that have had similar experiences to your daughter. What is most disturbing is if you look back over time, you see that Hillary Clinton wrote some book called It Takes a Village. And I think everyone thought at that time, like, oh, you know, really? Well, if you look around that time at what happened to CPS and foster care, that's around the same time that it became a business. And I try to, when I can, I try to help people that are victims of child trafficking and sex trafficking. Right. And when I tell you 90% of them were through foster care and CPS, that's a low number.
Absolutely.
And something's very, very wrong. It is a business, and it is a pathway to horrible lives. But what you guys are talking about, and I want to hear more, is I also had on a woman who is in California, and with this new crazy LGBTQ and all these things, her daughter was being given hormone blockers at school without her knowledge, and she complained, and CPS came and took her daughter. And this is happening all over the country. So I want people to know that when Terry and Mark tell their story, there are hundreds of thousands, I believe, of parents in this country, not to mention the ones that actually go to jail and never see their children again, ever. But if you guys could tell me a little bit about what happened in your life with your daughter and how it snowballed to just a nightmare.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. Before I jump into the details on that, I wanted to expand a little bit on what you mentioned about the driver behind this, and what Hillary Clinton said about in her book "It Takes a Village." The CPS and family court system was incentivized with large amounts of our Title IV Social Security money. It's called Title IV funding, and through the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. And so for every child that's removed, the federal Title IV money flows out to the states, and for all of the people that are involved in it, you would have, the people in the court system, CPS, and maybe even some medical practitioners. Who you have a whole slew of characters that are involved in this, and so they can get annual bonuses for the number of children that they can adopt out, and so. It's a repeatedly incentivized thing every year, because in order for the states to get that bonus money, they have to increase the number of children taken. And so it was characterized as when it was presented as, well, it's going to reduce the time that children in foster care. But what it did was it did create that business that you talked about, totaling billions of dollars of our money that we pay into this system for them to do this to us. And so people have to understand that when I talk about the unlawful separation of children, child abuse and neglect is a criminal statute in our state where it happened to us, which is the state of Kentucky, and just about every other state. However, parents are not being proceeded against criminally. They are framing it as a civil procedure, even though there is no contract in place between the parties pursuant to a child welfare action. And so the allegation is, in many cases, like in our case, we have the evidence that showed it was just there was a conspiracy that fabricated. There's no criminal charge, and yet they come and they treat you worse than a criminal because you're denied all of your due process rights, all of your protections, all of the constitutional rights that we have for our safety and our securities. And so the threat for the American people is that when you have 450,000, give or take a few thousand, like right now in foster care or in out-of-home placement, once those children age out or they're adopted out, and then they have to go and they have to get more. They have to go out and get more kids. And so it's not that we have a huge problem with bad parenting. We have a problem with a bad, corrupted, and an infiltrated system that we're funding, and then we're being deceived to think that this is in the name of a child's safety and best interest. And so it's not. It's actually very harmful to children. And we're out here in the public arena, trying to awaken people as to what's really going on, because this is happening, like you said, to thousands of our fellow Americans, and the effect is very destructive. Very rarely, there are exceptions to where children do get their children back, but it's the exception and not the norm. And so the children are being harmed because they're ripped away from their home environments. They're traumatized. They put them on psychotropic drugs, and then so they condition them in a variety of ways, and then that's the way in which they begin the child trafficking, the sexual exploitation of children, which even goes beyond that, because once they adopt them out or they age out, then they can move them more effectively into the human trafficking networks. And so it's destructive overall. It's a real threat to the welfare of our society and the future of the American family. And so we had no clue as to what was going on until we were thrust into it. Like I said before, in 2016, we took our 17-year-old daughter, Amy, in for a simple eye test because we wanted to get her driver's license, because Amy was a normal, rapidly growing adolescent, just like most children in America. And she was tall and thin like us, and we knew she was developing normally. We took her in to see this doctor that we had never seen before. Terry went to the appointment because we wanted to make sure her eyesight was good. And they did a standard well check, and then there were some probing questions in respect to Amy's eating habits and her weight, and they took her height and weight. And within a few days of that appointment, Terry and Amy did not want to do anything else other than what they went there for. This doctor began to call Terry and said that Amy may have additional issues, need to come in for an additional evaluation, and she didn't want to do that. So that was in February of 2016. And within about a month after that, we began receiving inquiries as if from CPS. And there's a lot to our story. We're going to mention our organization where people can find out more. But within that time period, because on March 25th, while I was at work, I got a call from Terry saying, I'm getting these strange phone calls as if from CPS. I have an emergency. Can you come home? So that went home and calmed everybody down. We did not return a phone call, so we didn't know really the legitimacy of that. And then later that evening, we went to go for a normal family visit. And we got our first CPS document from the girlfriend of Terry's father. And we thought that was pretty strange because this woman does not work in CPS or any government agency. She works in healthcare, or at the time she did. And so she said it was from CPS. We terminated the visit and we went back home, got another document the next day as if from CPS. And you know, Mel, I worked in the military with a lot of official government documentation. And my first look on the one and then the second one was that these look like forged documents. And it's highly suspicious. They looked a little bit too well compiled for like a supposed child welfare where someone would be writing on it. And so I went to the CPS office on March 28th after Terry took Amy to a second practitioner for a second opinion, who gave her a good bill of health. Her height and weight were different. She was shorter in height and she was about 12 pounds heavier in weight. We knew she was a healthy weight. The practitioner said she was a healthy weight, and they gave us a document saying she's in good health under no restrictions. We felt good about that. I went to go see the CPS supervisor to check on the legitimacy of those documents. And when I was there, he told me, yeah, we hand these out whenever we have a child welfare issue. And I asked him, well, what was going on? And he referred to a document on his computer. He would not let me have it. And he said, we have a diagnosis on your daughter saying that she's in imminent danger. She's severely anorexic, malnourished, and without immediate treatment, she will die soon. And I was really kind of shocked by that because first I knew that wasn't true. I had a good health document that I presented to him. And he said, well, we have a medical diagnosis. You know, I knew he could not have had a legitimate medical diagnosis because there was no diagnosis revealed to us. It could only have come from that first practitioner. And so after we went roundabout a few times, I left. And then that was on the 28th. And then on the 29th, we got another document delivered to our home saying that if we don't call CPS, they're going to remove all 7 of our children. And so I thought it was pretty strange because I was just at the CPS office the day before. And so we just kind of held on to that document. It looked just as suspicious as the other ones. And then later that evening, I had to go out away from the home on some personal business. And Terry was home. And I'll let her share a little bit about what happened on the evening of March 29th.
Well, the law enforcement came to the door with, I think, maybe one of the CPS workers and wanted me to open the door. They wanted to come in and question the children. And I may have asked them if they had a search warrant, and I did not let them have entry to our home. And they eventually left, and they ended up coming back the next day in full force. This is the police department in Jefferson County, Kentucky. It's called the Louisville Metro Police Department. And one of the people that were eventually given custody of our children had a twin brother that was a lieutenant on the Louisville Metro Police Department. So they ended up, it was the next day, right? They ended up coming back.
Yeah, that was March 30th. Yeah, so on I had taken the week off of work because I could see that things were not looking right in respect to what was unfolding. And so when I returned later that evening on March 29th, Terry was pretty upset, calmed everybody down. She had, she was trying to get the children settled down and in bed. And then the next day, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we had two officers from the Louisville Metro Police Department. It may have been a third, and a social worker show up at our house. He comes up to the door. He knocks on the door, and we have all the windows open in our house so we could see what was going on. And the officer said, "Mark, I need you to open the door. You lost custody of all 7 of your children." And so just like that, and I said, "And why are you guys here?" And he said, "Well, you haven't committed a crime. You're not going to jail." He said, "I need you to open the door. You lost custody of your children." And I said, "Well, and again, why are you guys here?" No answer. They had no paperwork mailed. They had no court order. They had no search warrant. Even though under state law, having been there the day before, they should have at least requested one. Now, this went on for about 2 hours because we refused them entry because they didn't have a search warrant. They didn't have any paperwork. I showed the officers a good health document. He took down the number. I told them they could call the medical practitioner and verify all that. They wanted me and Terry to open the door and talk to the social worker. We refused to do that. We had no need to do that. And so after about 2 hours of this, going back and forth because they were not leaving and additional officers were beginning to show up, Terry calls 911. And so she called 911 and said, there's something not right going on here. So we had even more come out. So we lived next to a church at the time, the parking lot, and then there was, other people beginning to show up. And then, so eventually then she called the local news media. And once they showed up, it began to take on a little bit of a different feel with these guys. And so even though they were all there, they kept trying to insist that they just want us to open the door, look at the children. We had all the windows open. You guys have been looking at our children. Here they are. They're walking back and forth in front of you. So we're not going to open the door for you. And so after about 2 hours of this, then they leave. Okay. Now, I found that to be pretty strange because if you're there on a supposed imminent danger issue that I just heard about from the CPS supervisor, even though they would never say that to me, that was the only legitimate reason they could be there. Why would you leave? So they leave, and then the next day, the same 2 officers who initially showed up in the morning, they tried to call me and said that they wanted me to come down to their to some office. I think it was the attorney's office at the time and pick up a document. I wouldn't do it. I said, if you guys have process, you guys, can just bring it. I think it was the attorney. The attorney called me. And so these 2 officers showed up and they delivered a memorandum, a hold in abeyance memorandum saying that we just need to go to court on April the 1st. And so they're up till that time, the day before, they had not issued a summons. They had just issued like a notebook piece of paper saying that we just needed to go to court. And so there were additional transmissions of some documents that kind of came out piecemeal that should have come out together that raised even more questions. It looked just as shoddy as the other ones. And then, on April the 1st, because we had not received, we had questions as to what was going on. And so we attempted to call, them and the Jefferson County Family Court System and inquire about the legitimacy of this. And we really could not get an answer from anybody. And so what happened was we did not go to the court as they said we needed to go because we didn't think that there was even a legitimate issuance or anything. It was all part of a scheme. And so we also had vehicle issues. And so and after the time passed on April the 1st, we had a Louisville Metro police officer dispatched to our home. And he said, well, I don't know what's going on here. I'm just here to do a welfare check. And so, yeah, we're fine. The children are fine. So there was no attempt like, oh, you guys are in contempt of court. We're going to arrest you. You're going to, none of that. Okay, which kind of raised even more questions for me, because then later in that afternoon, the social worker that I went to go see the supervisor on March 28th shows up at our home with one of Terry's relatives, and he has emergency custody orders, and he has affidavits, and he said, he wanted me to open the door and take him. I said, well, you can just leave him there. When I looked at him, they looked incomplete, shoddy, and then we later found out that under family court rules and process, social services is not allowed to issue court process. And so, none of this, all of this looked, just like some sort of a evil scheme unfolding before our very eyes. And so they were trying to get us back into court then again on April the 6th. And so on April the 2nd, because I could see the fraudulent nature of the forgeries of these documents, they didn't even have the names of some of our children correct. Some of the blocks were not checked off as far as granting custody to anyone but us. And so I went to go see a Jefferson County sheriff during the evening, and I kind of shared, the story up to this point. He looked at it. He obviously had some concerns, and then on one of the documents that that the supervisor from social services had issued to me, it said that there was a bench warrant for my arrest. And so when I showed that to the sheriff, he stepped out, and he began, apparently from my perspective, made some calls to see if there was any kind of legitimate thing out there in the system pursuant to that. And then when he came back, he gave me back my ID, and he said, well, we just recommend you see if you're going to be, if you're on the court docket in respect to the April 6th appointment. And so we did that, could not verify it. We could not see if our name or any other names were on there. And so on the advice of counsel, and I'm going to kind of skip forward on some things, but I went to the court on April the 6th. Initially, I was just go. The attorney was going to go with a good health document. They said, no, you need to come. And then it was, bring your daughter. And so I went back home, and I got Amy. She was playing with her sister on the trampoline. So I had to interrupt her day, the flow of our homeschooling and all of that, to go down. When we went into the court on April the 6th, they did not attempt to immediately take Amy to the hospital. They took her off to the side and began questioning her without the presence of my attorney that I had at the time. And then after they were done with her, then we went into the proceedings. And when as things unfolded, we presented a good health document and to the judge. And I'm thinking, well, worst case scenario, maybe they'll let us order a third party assessment. Well, that didn't happen. Amy stood up, addressed the judge, and she said, I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm fine. She got ordered to sit down and be quiet by the judge. And then eventually they ordered two people who were in the courtroom who should not have been allowed under state law. One of them, the girlfriend of Terry's father, and then another relative who actually was with the CPS social worker who tried to serve court process to me on March 30, on April 1st. And then so they ordered Amy, the judge ordered Amy to be taken to the hospital with those two, even though under state law, they are supposed to transport with a government official unless it's a relative of his, along with the lines of a relative of a specific gender. Now, neither one of them met that qualification. So once they got a hold of Amy, then they began to proceed against me. Initially, they just said, well, we need to detain Mark until we get the other 6 kids. So they called Terry on the phone, and the judge orders Terry to release the other 6 children to them. And Terry said, well, no one's going to take my children from me. And I'm sitting in the courtroom listening to all of this, and she hangs up on the judge. And so then they began to proceed against me. And so we're just going to go ahead and book him without charging me with a crime. They never read me my Miranda rights, like, Mark, you're under the arrest for, none of that. So they took me behind on the other side and began processing me, put me in solitary on the initial in the initial receiving room, and then I was held there for up to 22 hours, pretty close to 22 hours. And then once I was released, because I didn't know what was going on, they had put me in solitary during the ensuing time, a second time, because I asked why I was still there after about 5 hours. And so they said that I had been charged. Now they began to say, well, there was a charge for child abuse and neglect, and I had to pay, like $5,000 cash bail for each one of our children, and I'm going to be there until the next court hearing. Well, as I said, eventually I got released on April the 7th, even though I'd never been charged with a crime. And so then we began the process of trying to reclaim our children. And then what I later found out from Terry is that they didn't take Amy directly to the hospital. They took her back to our home with Terry there, and they began moving her things out of our house down to the girlfriend of Terry's father. Made about 4 trips back and forth, supposedly with our daughter, who's in imminent danger, which we knew she wasn't. And then later that evening, that's when they eventually took her to the hospital, and she was held there for 10 days or so against her will. She was not diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, even though that's what they made the original allegation was. And the key thing in all of this is, up to this point, is that anorexia nervosa and other types of eating disorders are an alleged mental health condition. And so that would have required a psychiatric evaluation and a physiological assessment to arrive at any kind of a legitimate diagnosis. And it probably would have precluded the taking of our other 6 kids. Well, we were not provided a Chapter 645 process under Kentucky state law. So we were denied the lawful due process pursuant to her alleged condition. And then even after she was released from the hospital after 10 days, she was not diagnosed with that condition. So instead of returning our children to us, they began rolling into other areas of our lives. And when they found out that our children didn't know what grade they were in because we homeschooled them, then they began to say that we were educationally neglecting our children, even though they went year round. And being a faith-based family, we had a rich, joyful, loving home. We educated our children with a lot of success. And then, so that was the second count. And then they went into other areas. And then, so because we would not comply with services that they wanted to force upon us, they wanted us to sign onto a case plan, which is all driven by the Clinton's Adoption and Safe Families Act, that, if people don't comply within about, I think, up to a 15-month period, then they can assign permanent custody to other people or move to adopt them out or terminate a parent's rights. Now, they eventually moved to assigning permanent custody with the girlfriend of Terry's father and one of her other relatives. Initially, they were supposed to keep all 7 of our children together. They did not do that. They split them between the 2 of them. And then, so we've been fighting ever since. We have been standing on the protections of our constitutional rights, and I'll wrap this up here, but we've been denied all the protections of our constitutional rights, and we discovered an infiltration into the court system in Jefferson County. This is important to note because what we identified on the evidence was we began to see near exact images on the CPS documents and on the court documents and on some of the police documents when we went into the court file. And we could tie all these into the girlfriend of Terry's father. And we have over 1,000 images and across many documents. And we arrived at this because we identified it through the fact that she has a very distinctive writing style. We have documentation that we saved going back to 2013, a letter, and then another document that I was able to acquire, a party invitation going back to 2005. And so near exact images of these documents show up, and it's very distinctive, near exact. It looks like some of them were scanned and then made electronically. And so this, from the evidence that we have, we know that there is a child trafficking operation going there. And so we reported this to all law enforcement agency available to us. Class felonies, the conspiracy to kidnap our kids, the fraud that's involved. many other crimes, many other misdemeanor and felony crimes. And yet we have been denied and turned away everywhere we went, from the state crimes up all the way up to the highest levels, through the Office of the Attorney General, Department of Criminal Investigations. We went for the federal crime to the FBI several times, the highest levels of the Department of Justice. We tried to reach our president in the White House and never got an answer several times. And so then we went to our representatives, and we got no help. Initially, Rand Paul's office did appear to try to help us, but in the end, they shut us down and stopped talking to us. And so we have nowhere else to go. Our children remain in danger. We are being egregiously denied the practice of our First Amendment, to practice our faith in accordance with our faith practice, our children not being with us. So this is an egregious, evil thing happening. What happened to us, we, on the evidence, are very confident this has been a long-running thing there. And it's important to note for your viewers across the country, because in the state of Kentucky, Mel, when we talked about the Clinton's Adoption and Safe Families Act, prior to that, the family court system was begun as a pilot project right there in Jefferson County in 1991. So it's almost as if they had this little thing that they were planning. And then as they claimed it was successful, it branched out from there across the state of Kentucky. And they had on the court website at the time that they were a national model. So we feel that what we've uncovered, that in talking to other families who are having the same things happen to them like a script, that we've discovered the core of where this started and what's happening across the country. And we asked for an investigation. We wanted a case of national interest that we petitioned our representatives in the Department of Justice to investigate this. We met with U.S. attorneys in 2 states. We had to go to West Virginia to do it. And when the assistant U.S. attorney there was convinced enough, after an hour and a half with us and seeing our evidence, he forwarded it to Kentucky, and they wrote to us and said that they weren't going to do anything. And there was no way, based on the letter that we got, that they could have looked at our evidence. To us, it just appeared like it was just a quick brush off. Oh, here's another CPS family. And so we're out here now in the public arena because we want the American people to know the nature of the threat, the disgusting injustice, not just in respect to our family, but the fact that our children remain in danger, other people's children are in danger, and whether they've been taken from you or not, if they have not, you are still threatened by this. And so our hope is, our objective is to reach out, inform, connect with other Americans that maybe, hopefully together, we can demand the corrective action. And so that's why we're here, and appreciate you letting us get all that out, because it's really important for people to know. And so I'm going to turn it back over to you for any questions, or if you want to move on into talking to something else.
No, I wanted to ask, how old was your daughter when this all started?
When it started, she was 17. And
she was like basically almost an adult. You know,
Yeah.
she could certainly decide for herself if she was well or not. Who was it your father's wife that made the complaint? Who made the complaint? Or you don't know?
Well, we don't know who made the complaint, because the way they do this is they protect people who make these inquiries or complaints, and it could be any kind of an issue. I mean, you could have a certain political persuasion about yourself, or if you have a life choice that someone doesn't like, they could call CPS anonymously, and they will never let you know who it is. Now, in our case, we have questions as to whether there was actually ever a call made, or if this was more of a closely handled scheme to where maybe there wasn't a call, that this was just a pre-planned unfold. We know it was pre-planned, but whether it was just more of an internally handled thing. But so the allegation was that we failed to get medical treatment for our daughter, even though we went to that second practitioner,
right,
and they had no legitimate diagnosis based on the requirements to arrive at a legitimate diagnosis that I talked about before. And so, so Amy was 17, and then I just want to fill in a little blank here for you, in that even though they alleged that we were educationally neglecting our children as that additional count, within a few months after Amy was taken, she became a governor's scholar for the state of Kentucky. So that was the result of our many years investing in her and her brothers and sisters who were on the same path. And so the fact that we have all the evidence that will show that we were not doing these things,
Right.
and yet they're still, they have proceeded against us up to this point. So Abby, our youngest, was 3 at the time. And so, you know, it's been 6 years, and we haven't seen the 4 youngest ones since about our 2nd or 3rd visit, right after they were taken. We hadn't seen them for the first month after they were taken. So they moved to break the bond immediately that a child would have with their children. And then they began supervising our visits. They wanted us to go before, you know, this agency that they could monitor us through walls and video cameras, and we didn't want to do that. So we were able to do it at the church next door. And then because it became uncomfortable for the people who were involved, they didn't really want to continue with it. And then we had to just stop because we were discovering the crimes, and we had to get out of the area for our own safety and security so we could investigate this further. So, you know, it wasn't because we didn't want to be with our children or visit with them, but, you know, Mel, we're not visitors to our children. Right. They belong to us, okay? And so we're fighting for them to reclaim them from the ones who are holding them hostage from us right now. And so, you know, we want to know how many other families in Kentucky, or, you know, that this has happened to right there in Jefferson County. I mean, we did an assessment. We began retrieving documents from government websites in respect to child placement. We have about 1.5 years, maybe 2. And we're going to show all of this. We've already shown some of it in other interviews, but relative placement in the state of Kentucky at the time, they were #1 in non-relative placement of children taken. And people will think, well, why weren't they being placed with relatives? And the reason for that is that under the Adoption and Safe Families Act, very little to no money flows out, as I mentioned before, for relative placement, which is why Mary most likely wasn't given the children as a grandmother, because you know, there's very little to no money there. And so that's why we see signs in our communities everywhere we go now, for the most part, asking people to be foster parents, because they take the children, they don't place them with relatives, because a large amount of Title IV money flows out for foster care placement. And so now we're seeing child traffickers who are becoming foster parents, and they're not doing a good enough background check, or maybe they're just doing it because they're feeding that network. And so they're getting caught up in the child trafficking networks. And so it's a very dangerous thing. And so, you know, we didn't sign on to that case plan, #1, because having been a veteran and taking an oath, and whether you take the oath or not, you still have a right as an American citizen to not be subject to involuntary servitude by the government under the 13th Amendment. And in the state of Kentucky, it's forbidden in Section 25. And being that we were not charged or convicted of any crime, we refused. And so because of that, like I said, they're holding our children hostage. They want these parents like us to submit to these services. And the services are things like this: a psychological evaluation, a drug test, family counseling, anger management, anything else that they can come up with. And then what they do is they won't use those things to necessarily clear a parent, but to fabricate or come up with reasons why the parent will not get their child back. Right. And so there's additional Title IV money that flows out through those things. And so we're being extorted of our money. And then like in our case, some parents will even be subject to child support, and they've taken over almost $40,000 of my military pension in the name of child support. They're subjecting Terry. Yeah, they did it without even a hearing, Mel, and then they're subjecting Terry, who is a stay-at-home mom, to child support too. And so the amount of money that they're taking is very destructive to not just our ability, but many parents' ability to maintain a livelihood. And so
it's a racket. It's a criminal racket. It's just it's a criminal racket in our federal government. It's probably the worst system, corrupt system there is of all the systems, is the family court, because it's been going on underneath our noses. Right. It's been going on for a long time. And you know, Mark and Terry are brave enough to, they've had every single right they're, you know, committed against them, or they've had so many crimes against them. It's incredible.
Yeah, and the truth is that it's all about money, which is very terrifying. Now, the other thing that bothers me about this, I dealt with somebody who had who, when she went to jail, I had tried to help her. Her 3 kids disappeared. She never saw them again. This is a big racket when it comes to getting arrested. And again, she wasn't convicted. She was put in jail. She was a single mom. Next thing you know, she still has never seen her children again. And, you know, you wonder what is going on. And then you look at the statistics of all these children, and then you watch what's going on. God forbid, you know, your child is one of those kids going across the border. You know, like you're saying, those people are paying $500 to pick up a child at the border right now, and they're not being vetted. And it just shows you.
But remember, Mel, this is we know this now because there's so much news, there's so much stuff that we know now. What we know is America, okay, is where the most wanted children. This is what we pay. I hate to say this, the most money for children in this country of all the other nations. And you know that it's global. The trafficking is very, very global. It's huge. Ukraine is the hub.
I know. Okay? People don't know that. I'm glad you said that. I've said it before too.
Netherlands, Italy. There's okay. And so it's the biggest, you know, commodity is America. The children, so that's why we had to develop leave it to Clinton, how to develop our own system within our own country to have our own children trafficked and to pay. It's happening. Nests are everywhere in this country. Nests are everywhere. It is absolutely evil. It is absolutely disgusting. There are arms to what they do with children. They have gotten so sinful that it was becoming, you know, younger and younger babies for abuse. So that's how sinful, evil it has become. Terry and Mark are one family. There are millions of families. And my family was an informant. He was selling marijuana. He became a drug informant for the local police. That's what he wanted. He didn't want to have to pay child support. She got custody. He didn't want to pay child support. First visit, he comes together with a plan. He gets the cop to help him. He gets the CPS to help him because everybody knows everybody. He gets the judge. She gets the children taken away in the middle of the night. And my daughter went and took the plan that Mark is talking about. She took the plan and it ruined her life. They put her on methadone. They put her on psychological. They put her on all kinds of stuff. The doctors are corrupt. The therapists are corrupt. The CPA, everybody, CASA is corrupt. CASA, the lawyers for the children. I mean, and the money, I went through so much money because she took the plan and we fought for those children. And I went through so much money to get those children back. And I'll tell you, it's a sick cycle. It's a sick cycle.
That's awful. Yeah, it is about money more than anything else. But you know what else it's about? And I know your brother dealt with this too. There is a real problem in this country with judges.
Yes.
It's very wrong. And I did a lot of work on the Epstein case early on. And I found and talked to many people who said that one of the big blackmail rings going on was the blackmailing of federal judges.
That's right.
And that this is big business behind the scenes, especially in Washington, but all over the country. And what you find is that they're getting not just kickbacks, but a lot of them are compromised already, or they're put in situations and they happen to. So we're watching another story, but we're watching what's happening with January.
Well, the family
judge.
Well, no, the family court judges are, let me tell you, the family court judges are judges that are like, they don't know what to do with these judges. They're not, there's no specific, great thing that they've done. These are judges that I know in Rhode Island, which is so corrupt. The judge that was overseeing my daughter's case, she was related to one of the attorney generals. So they didn't know what to do with her because she had a mouth and she was messing around with men and all kinds of stuff. They put her in the family court in Newport, which is a country club. Right. And then they took her out, though, because she was so corrupt. They found that she was so corrupt, they had to take her out. Next thing you know, there was another judge in there. So they moved these judges in family court around because really there's so much criminal activity in the family court system. Yeah. Like my ex son-in-law, he was a total criminal.
And they have no oversight. That's the other thing. They have no oversight. A lot of these judges have lifetime appointments too.
That's right.
They couldn't care less at all. The judge issue. I live in New York City. The Southern District of New York is where big cases go to be buried. Yeah. I've seen it again and again. And with what you guys are talking about, both of you, with these classes that they give to parents to win their kids back when the parent doesn't even have those problems, they're making a fortune off of those classes.
That's right. Oh, the federal government.
Right. I looked into de Blasio had something called Thrive New York for the mentally ill. Not 1 cent went to it was supposed to.
No.
I looked at how much these services cost. And then because I was investigating it to report on it. And then you look at the salaries at these, like you're talking about CASA. You look at the salaries at these community service groups. This is all a money laundering scam. And our children are being destroyed. And you have to wonder what.
Well, they don't care about the children at all.
Right. I was going to say.
The system doesn't even care about the children.
This is like, this is like what we've learned over COVID. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's for your own good. It's for you're protecting your grandmother. It's for your health. What about the mental health of your kids that watch this go on for hours and days and months and weeks? Your 3-year-old that's now 9, she must be so traumatized. I don't see how she'll ever, in life be able to it's something that you never forget. She's going to remember that forever. And they don't care. Like even when you said that they showed up at your house, the windows are open, they're seeing all your kids. These people are abusing your children. They're traumatizing them for no reason. This is not a violent crime. This is not a criminal charge. This is, and I have another friend, same thing, that kind of a setup like Roger Stone, where they showed up in the middle. They have 3 teenage boys. They're all like, what's going on? It was like some tax thing. And they do it to cause as much trauma as they can. And then they take the kid. And then that kid is already traumatized. And that's where they start manipulating and changing them.
Yeah, that's the plan, though. Mel, that's the plan. That's the plan of the radical behavior of these people. This is what they're doing. Right. They're taking the gut and soul out of the hearts of American families.
Children, especially.
And well, that's it. The children are the heart and soul. That's our heart and soul. That's America's future. That's it. And so.
Yeah, well, it's Marxism and communism. Get as many children as you can, turn them against their parents, and you have them forever as soldiers.
I gotta say one thing that I heard, and I don't know what you feel about Elon Musk or anything. I find him fascinating, but I gotta say something that he brought up. He brought up a very, very important point the other day. Because people get on him because he's got all kinds of kids, whatever. Right. God bless him for having kids. And Donald Trump, too, God bless him for taking care of his children. I always found that fascinating because, he was a divorced man, but you could see that he loved his children. Yeah. I mean, that's important for people to know that men are very important in their family. But Elon Musk brought up a very, very important point. We have a crisis of underpopulation. Right. Okay. We are going to be, I think he said in 2030, and I haven't been able to research this yet, but in 2030, there will be pretty much such a drop in children that we're in a crisis. You can't
that's the goal. That's the goal. Right. They can't have their one world government, their complete control over humanity unless they get rid of as many people as possible. And they especially need the kids. Because what's scary about what happened to you guys, first of all, now fast forward, I have more friends that homeschool than I ever imagined I would in my life because of COVID. But they probably didn't like that you were homeschooling. They didn't like that they weren't getting that money for the school district because every child gets them money. And they didn't like that you weren't complying with whatever they said. And more than that, which is so disturbing to me, is that they really they didn't give you a chance to defend yourselves. And the worst part is, had you been able to defend yourselves, you guys a lawyer would have cost a fortune. You're that kind of case. They don't give you a lawyer for that case, that you have to pay for that lawyer. That's not a pro bono case. So getting a lawyer must have been impossible.
Yeah, well, that's true. Now, they do offer a public defender, and they get money from the federal government. They only give you as much money as they will get under those kind of grants.
Tell her who the public defender was.
Yeah,
I was going to say, good luck finding a public defender that's not on the dole.
You know,
She was the daughter of the prosecuting attorney's office.
Yeah, the public defender that they tried to give me after the other attorney, he wanted to quit because we wouldn't comply with services. And though you talk about these attorneys, most of them are only interested in being gatekeepers and navigators to compliance. They're not interested in defending our rights or upholding our due process or any other protections of, you know, the laws. It's all because it's all about just funneling you through the system.
Yeah.
And so when we got rid, they tried to split us, which began what we think was their ultimate objective, which was to try to destroy our marriage. And we've been able to, you know, cement that. I mean, we have a strong marriage. We love each other very much, but they will split parents like they did us. And so they gave Terry a public defender, and then they gave me one. And the one they tried to give me eventually was the daughter of the prosecuting attorney.
Unbelievable.
Right there in Jefferson County. It's like, oh, well, would there be a conflict of interest there? So we refused on that. And so she got rid of her public defender. I refused what they were trying to give me. And then we went pro se, and we were standing this entire time on the protections of our rights. We put motions before the court saying how, you know, we've been denied due process, the protections of many of our constitutional rights, which is a federal crime in and of themselves that we reported to the federal law enforcement that they refused to do anything about. And then, and so that's kind of the stalemate in that, because we would not comply and we have our rights, and then we identified all of these crimes, then they're holding on.
To get a real attorney, you would have to pay out of your pocket hundreds of thousands of dollars. The public defenders are there. They work for the system. So their whole goal is to put the paperwork through, have you take a plea, pass it on. But it sounds like they wanted your kids to put them in the system. This doesn't sound like this really had anything to do with you. Even the anorexia nonsense, that's not something, usually they would have you have a time period and put her on a diet. This, because my sister's a child psychiatrist. When she deals with anorexic patients, you know, there's many steps you take. It's actually mental. So there's many steps you take, but your daughter, because I know you, Terry, you're tall and look really thin. People could think you have anorexia. Maybe it's just her body, but they didn't even try. They didn't even try. And then they traumatized the rest of your kids, and you haven't seen them in all this time. And I'll tell you right now, it's just like General Flynn. And I've talked to him about it too. And Roger Stone, everyone that they've persecuted this whole time, they have to go out and get lawyers for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh my goodness.
And the government has unlimited money.
Oh,
so all they want to do is to destroy you financially, emotionally, psychologically, and then throw you away and do whatever they want with your kids, which is terrifying.
Yeah. It's been, and family, this system's been going on for a long time. I mean,
you're Irish Catholic. You remember what happened back in Boston and all that stuff with all those kids.
You know, I gotta say that, you know, from what I have discovered and what I was put into when I was working for the Catholic Church, I see the Lord showed me the whole picture now. And even in the experience with my daughter and my own grandchildren, that had to happen for me, because I know what Catholic Charities, I know what the Catholic Church has done. I financially knew and saw and was aware. I was even aware that, because I had Vatican messages come, because I was a finance administrator. I saw Vatican messages. So I even knew when COVID was beginning, before COVID was beginning, parishes were already being told, priests were already being told that they were going to shut down. And so, you know, there's a lot of collections and things that are going on, lots of money laundering going on, and children, you know, right now we're seeing children. Now they're just dropping children at the border now. So what do you think they're dropping just children for? Because this country pays a lot of money for children.
Right.
We pay a lot of money for children. as opposed to other nations. We
Right.
pay money for children. That's disgusting. It's
And where are all the lawyers and all the judges and all that have any compassion and empathy? Because even look at the gymnastics girls, that went on for decades.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
you know, and it's like we have so many of these examples of children being trafficked or abused.
Well,
they have good parents, and it's right under their nose. The scary part is what you guys are talking about now is happening in public school every single day. So now we have a whole bunch of children that go to school, and the whole job of that deranged teacher and this Biden regime's SEL learning and all that is basically to teach the child that everything that they learn at home, especially anything having to do with God and family, is should be, you know, that's stupid. Stay away from that. Go this way. I am telling you that that's part of it.
They're removing God. Christian persecution's been going on for centuries, and it's still going on. People just don't understand. We are persecuted as Christians. No, I think
it's part of this story.
Even the little bit we're all talking about right now is a persecution. Terry and Mark were Christians. They're Christians. They were teaching their children Christian values, and that's something that they don't want to hear about. Oh, hey, when I was going through this with my daughter, they knew I was working for the Catholic Church. They were like that with me, you know, Catholic Church.
I'm surprised the Catholic Church didn't help you, since they have so much power.
Oh, no, I didn't get any help from, there's no help there.
There's no help anywhere.
That's a whole nother show, Mel. That's a whole nother show.
Well, we'll do it. But I have to say, I don't know. Well, now that I have you, then we will. Because I have a lot of questions about that, because I know that it's been infiltrated. I live right across from the main archdiocese in New York City here. And you know, I got questions. But and the Catholic Church is facilitating a lot of the trafficking at the border. You know, people don't know that. And it might not be the Catholic Church itself, but there's these groups that are funded mainly by George Soros and the UN that go under the guise of being religious, and they're not. They're fraudulent. They're fake. Which I understand why you guys, when they came to your door, you were like, how can this be real?
Right.
It doesn't even sound real. And now, where are your kids now? Are they still with? Now, is your father alive? That it's the girlfriend? Terry?
From what we know, yes.
Is he involved, or is she separate from him?
No. And I just want to clarify. This is the girlfriend of Terry's father. She's not married to him. She is not a relative under law. So they. You know, and this is part of what we wanted to come out of the investigation, because if the conspiracy to kidnap our kids, and they've been involved in this trafficking network, and it's probably a long-running thing, how is this woman involved in respect to taking children? Because I had her say things to me about how many children that she had overseen over a period of time. And so is she getting the large amounts of Title IV funding for foster care placement?
That's what I would want to know.
For our 7 kids. And that would, you know, from what we discovered in talking with other people, depending on what they can say or about a child in respect to special needs, they can get up to around, on average, $2,000 per month per child.
Oh, for sure.
So, you know, when you, like in our case, that would be a lot of money every month coming in. And then we have evidence that this woman, you know, circulated money among many different people. And so, you know, it's kind of like, you know, so they get the kids, they can traffic the kids, abuse the kids over and over, and then they get that money, and then they, you know, put them on the psychotropic drugs, like I said, and then they're laundering that money. And then where does that money end up? Does it end up back in control of our representatives, our people in Congress or other law enforcement officials to bribe them? Because, you know, Terry mentioned about this woman having a twin brother in the Louisville Metro Police Department at the time. The Louisville Metro Police Department, that when we were in the beginning parts of this, we discovered that there was a lawsuit filed in respect to the Boy Scout Explorer program, where there were children who were being abused in the police department Explorer program. You know, and so we think that there's something even much bigger going on there.
The Boy Scouts had to pay $800 million. And it came through and went away. It's just like this is a major problem. Here's the worst part. I believe that good people don't even want to hear about it. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to hear about it. It's too hard to hear. Even when I told people about the truth about Epstein and Maxwell and that it wasn't what they were telling, my mom doesn't want to hear it. I tell the truth about what's going on with the Finders or DC or MK Ultra. Anyone that I know is telling the truth that I've had on. It's like people that do not want to believe evil exists will refuse to even discuss it. And that's a big problem.
Yeah. Well, it's sad in America because Americans, we just have such a beautiful country. We live such a beautiful life and we're spoiled. We want things done yesterday and we don't want to look at this stuff. Remember the pro-life movement. I remember when my mother would began, one of the things they changed about their marketing was this, let's show the baby parts. Remember that? And that was like shocking to people when they started to see those images. And so that changed people.
It did change. I know somebody who has said to me, a guy recently after the Roe thing said he was totally pro-choice until he saw one of those videos. And then he was like, I never again. So you have to show people evil sometimes. And we're living in a really ugly world. You guys, you guys were talking about.
No, thank you for, Mark and Terry to me are heroes. I know what it feels like to go to bed and
I can't even imagine the whole
and not knowing where those children, and now I'm only dealing with my grandchildren. It devastated me, but the mother, I also had the sadness of the mother. I had my daughter in tears, her heartache.
Yeah.
So Terry and Mark it's just amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah, no. And I've been talking, I met the Terry a year ago and she told me her story and I couldn't believe this. And I've interacted with her over this time. The scary part is that since I've been doing this, I've met at least a dozen people with a similar story. Yeah. And the truth is, it doesn't really matter where it is. People do not want to touch it. They don't. No. Lawyers do not want to touch this stuff. A lot of times, what I found here in New York, especially, is that there's a ring here of very wealthy people that are involved in New York and New York State. I mean, we know about Nexium, that's part of it. But and what happens in New York, or what I saw happen here with both cases, Maxwell and that case and the Wiener case, was the second it goes to the Southern District of New York, okay, that's it. Give them the least charge and we'll be on our way. And that's the real problem. Also, you would need a real lawyer. There's no way that a public defender would ever be allowed to fight this. They wouldn't be allowed. You would need to get a lawyer that you nor anyone else that lost their kids can probably afford, or you wouldn't have lost them in the first place, is the truth. Yeah. And we got to do something about it. We really do. What we really need to do is multi-layered. But the first and foremost, if anyone's watching this and is a victim of a similar case of either Mary or Terry and Mark, please get in touch with me. We need to have a network of people that aren't afraid. I'm really sick of people saying how much they're going to change everything and nobody shows up to do it. Right. And, if we show up en masse, believe me, these people are just humans and they're afraid of us showing up, but nobody is showing up. And that's a big deal. Second, if you have any cases, please let us know. If you are a lawyer out there or an advocate, please get in touch, because I have to tell you, this is your responsibility. None of us on this screen right now can file a lawsuit or go to court or do any of that. And you could be retired, whatever. If you are a lawyer, please get involved, because I have heard this story, multiple stories like this. Some even like, just like that woman that I know that went to jail for only like less than 30 days, came out. She hasn't seen her kids in 2.5 years and doesn't know where they are. So if there are lawyers out there and advocates that have, understand what's going on a massive scale, please get in touch and help these people. All you need is a couple cases. If you win a couple of these cases and set some precedent, then other lawyers have the chance to do it. And nobody's even doing the first step, as I can see.
Well, we have to remember that we're already dealing with the effects of what the system has done with delinquents, of kids coming out of it, adults turning into adults. We're also going to have a serious crisis of pedophile. So we know pedophile exists. It's a soul sickness, but we also have to deal with the fact that these children have been abused, and then they're going to turn into pedophile. Right. Because it does happen. Let's be honest about
and it's happening at our schools. I don't care what they say. We all know what's happening at our schools. And a lot of it has to do with like literally transhumanism and devaluing human life and canceling God. It is so disgusting, but we have to also realize.
And they're going to let children take hormones, and they're going to have boys have babies.
And if you don't let your child take it, CPS will come get your kid because you're emotionally abusing them. That's in the books in California right now.
That's in the books in California. Well, California wants to normalize pedophilia.
I know.
So, the grooming of CPS foster care and all this trafficking. And don't forget, it's a multi-billion-dollar business in pornography and dark web. So we've got a whole nother perversion that they do. It's a whole string of arms that are going on here with children.
Yeah.
And the Lord, wants us to focus on saving children, really. I mean, it is about the children.
Yeah, we need some justice, I have to say, in this country. I follow a lot your brother and all of the people I consider friends that are being persecuted in that realm, just because God knows what, because other people don't want their crimes to be known. But I also, I know a lot of this stuff is out there. I mean, it goes all the way back, especially in DC, but none of that is conspiracy theory, none of it. And during the lockdowns, I'm in New York City. I had a guy about 3 blocks away come up to me. He's like, my building, they're trafficking young girls out of my building when we were locked down. It's everywhere. It's in your
Providence, Rhode Island was doing it. I mean, there was a law on the book. It's one of the things that these lawmakers, we have a terrible problem. Democrats, Republicans, politicians, absolutely, both sides are absolutely out of control. Out of control. And the old laws on the books in Rhode Island that you could be prostituting. So they were buildings that they had kids in, but you couldn't go in on the street, but you can go in a building.
Right.
So,
that's what I think was going on here, by the UN. Not shockingly enough.
There you go.
Now, Terry and Mark, how can people get involved and help you? I can't even imagine. I know that myself. I can't even imagine what you've gone through. I also think that you probably both need some spiritual, psychological, like everything you could need. You guys are in need of, but I'm sure you're in need of financial help and support and legal help and support. So how can people find you and help you? Because I think it's really important. And again, if you are out there and can do that, all you need to do is help one family like Terry and Mark get the case on the books, get a good judgment. That judgment could help another 1,000 families. We're not getting to the place where there's laws on the books to prevent this. And that's a very big problem. You need precedent in law to stop this kind of stuff. So you guys, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Mel, for allowing us to come before your audience and share our story. And thank you, Mary, so much for what you've done for us, love and kindness to us, and for taking time out today to be here with us. Mel, there's a few things that your audience can do to help address this problem. We have an organization called Let Our Children Go, and they can contact us through that website. There's a contact page for, if you're a family member that's been affected, or you were a foster child and, you're trying to find your family, or you were an adopted child. And so anybody that's been affected by this system, or advocates for the system, or like you said, anybody that can help with cases. Our case is just one of many. But anybody that's willing to reach out and connect with us and can offer support or advice, they can get in touch with us there. If you're, like you said, Mel, if you're an attorney, or if you're somebody in law enforcement that can help us to get some action, like Mark
anyone
said,
can do it. They just have to take the first step. I think people are scared, or they don't want to believe it. But you know what? I think there's more people out there that are waking up to all of this. I think people have been shaken to the core in the last few years, seeing a lot of evil that they wanted to not see and could not avoid. So I think there's a lot more people out there right now that are willing to get involved. And I do believe that part of it is that you were homeschooling and you're Christian. And call it what you will. I'm seeing friends being getting notes in the mail because their kids aren't returning to school. And you know what? They're not sending their kids to be brainwashed and manipulated to come home and hate them. So, but it is happening now. And there are literally, I think, millions of people that have turned to homeschooling. And what you said about your daughter and homeschooling, all of my friends that are homeschooled, their kids went on to have amazing college careers and careers after that. They're some of the best behaved, smartest. And for everyone out there, homeschooling is actually not what you think it is. It is, a lot more doable than you think, because what's happening in the courts and what happened to Mark and Terry is right now happening in classrooms. And, people aren't aware. Go ahead. Where else?
Yeah. So, thank you for saying that. I mean, we have 7 beautiful children. We had homeschooled all their lives. So you can imagine the kind of shock to their system.
I can.
Out of that and the public school system and whatever else they did with them. We found out.
I wonder why we have so many mentally ill people and drug addicts. A lot of them came through that. I'm telling you.
Well, that's what's going on. That's the repercussions we're feeling this
right.
This is going on. Look at the 2 18-year-old kids that shot up Buffalo and the other one. Those are 18-year-old kids,
right. Right, exactly. And of course, always the cops and FBI seem to always know about the shooters. But on top of that, the other thing is that these kids that go into foster care and stuff, a lot of times they're placed with people that might look good on the outside. But how many times have all of us seen on the news some kid beaten to death and CPS was at their house 15 times and didn't take them, and then you look at your story and you think, what is going on here? There's some kind of incentives and motives. We really have to get to the bottom of it. And I'm definitely committed to do that.
If people want to get in touch with us, they can reach us at letourchildrengo.org.
Right.
We have a contact page there, or they can email us at letourchildrengo@protonmail.com. And we do have a personal fundraiser for restoration of our family on GiveSendGo. It's givesendgo.com/saving our family. And the link for that too can be found on our website at letourchildrengo.org. We have an Our Story page. But what we're hoping to do with Let Our Children Go is I'm hoping to move towards getting that registered as an official nonprofit. And because we do have a 3-part mission statement for exposing what's happening, reclaiming our freedoms, and restoring the family. So we want to be able to help the families that this is happening to. So people that want to join with us in achieving that, please reach out to us. Like General Flynn says, local action has a national impact, and we're hoping to maybe start local chapters for Let Our Children Go.
Great.
And so anybody that's interested in helping, because they've destroyed our family.
Obviously, and you know what? Everyone watching this better realize, just like I always say about General Flynn and Roger Stone, it could be you. There is no rhyme or reason. It could have been your next door neighbors, not you. It could be anyone. We are at a place in America right now where our institutions have turned against we the people. So everyone's got to realize, supporting anyone, you got to remember that could be your kids next time for no reason. It's really important people get that.
Your kids or somebody in your family, it still has the potential to affect you, because those kids are being damaged and traumatized. And so there's an overall effect on society by this corrupt system. So it has an impact on potentially everybody.
Absolutely.
And Mary, for you, I want to say I've met more grandparents than I have parents that have fought so hard to get their kids, whether their kids were unable to raise the child or whatever. They're more likely to give it to a stranger than to a grandparent. Grandparents really need to step up.
I was villainized. They made me a villain. I fought very hard against these people, and I actually was the one that, helped my daughter and her. They were young, 27, when she wanted to have a child so bad. I don't know what he was. We found out his background was something she never even knew. He was actually AWOL. She didn't even know he went AWOL. He married her and became a monster after he married her. You know what I mean? Those kinds of stories. Domestic violence is another topic. on this whole thing that the family court has no business, getting involved with. They don't know how to deal with it. It's another thing that the cops don't know about either. They don't know about.
And look at what they pay and where they get these people, the training programs, all that. These are not people that have it in their soul to save people. I've met enough social workers to know that it's a job, and we need more people who are there for the right reasons.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, there's a system. There's an easy system to build. There's, what we got to do with now though is we got to deal with the courts. We got to deal with the courts. We got to deal with justice. That's what we're doing here at America's Future, which we're filing a lot of amicus briefs.
I know you guys are doing a great job.
We're fighting to do that, but we're going to start fighting we're going to get into the children though. I'm going to push the chairman, General Flynn, and my board. I got Laura Logan. I got Laura Logan. She's doing a lot of work with children too. So
we people forget General Flynn was actually one of the first people that called it out. And that tweet went by the wayside, but I'll never forget it. And you know how I feel about him. He's the best of the best.
His heart is with the children, like I am.
I know.
He and I are very close about that. We do agree with that specifically. That is.
Anytime he talks about what's happened to him, he says it's all about his grandkids, and he means it with tears in his eyes. If only everyone knew, and you and I've met your sister, your other brother. You guys are amazing salt of the earth people and helping people. And this is how we're going to save our country, is all of us stepping up, showing up and making a difference and giving other people the strength to do the same. So thank you all. Mary, where can people find you?
Well, I'm at americasfuture.net. That's where I'm at here. And, you can find me here. We're doing some stuff, good work, You're
doing great stuff. We need these lawsuits on the books and to get some decisions to help other people fight back. Because until it gets all the way through and there's a decision, it's just running in circles. So great for you.
We got some people that are going to work on some legislation with the kids too, Terry, Mark. I've got some great ideas going on here. I'm going to start to move into some other stuff now. So.
Okay. Anyone watching this, if you have any ideas or can help with legislation and figuring out how to fix the courts and save our children, please also get in touch. And I'll leave everyone's links below. Thank you so much. And I know it's a heavy show, but our children truly are all we got here in America. And if we lose America, what does it matter? So we got to save America. We got to save it for our children. And I believe life will be better on the other side of this battle. But it's a battle between good and evil. And nothing matters more than our